where I get a chance to chat with luminaries in e-discovery and related areas. This broadcast is sponsored by Reveal-Brainspace, the industry's leading AI e-discovery platform. Don't forget to subscribe to watch me, George Socha, weekly with leaders in e-discovery. Thank you for tuning in.
Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha, Senior Vice President of Brand Awareness at Reveal. Each week, I host eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. This week, we are broadcasting live, as if you couldn't tell, from Croke Park in Dublin, where we are at Ireland's Legal Tech Conference 2022. Past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live. My guest for this, the first of 3 podcasts today, is Jonathan Flood. Jonathan is Senior Director of Data Automation at HaystackID. And Jonathan, why don't you introduce yourself in greater depth?
Okay, where do I start? I have... This is my 13th year, I think, in e-discovery. Started off in a law firm where, summation enterprise was the tool of the day, small projects, small cases. And for the last 13 years, I've been growing my experience in various related fields. So I did investigations for a little while. I eventually did a master's in digital forensics. And for the last, I think, 7 years now, worked with originally Night Owl Discovery, who were acquired by Haystack in 2020. So
one of my hometown providers, because they started
Minnesota.
in Minnesota.
Yeah. So I think it's my 13th year. It's been a very interesting journey to get here. Learned a lot along the way, so that's why we, have these discussions. We can talk about experiences learned. And
So let's start with experience learned. You say you learned a lot along the way. What are some of the highlights, or for that matter, the low points?
Well, I think there's always highlights. There's always positives to take away, even from I'm sure everyone's had disasters in their projects over the years. But even at those disasters, you learn how to not do that or how to avoid that in the future. And why I'm now Senior Director of Data Automation is we sort of, along that journey, realize that those mistakes are just learning opportunities for writing better SOP, writing better documentation, understanding data better, understanding client requests better, and building cohesive workflows that, integrate all that learning into one single workflow that's able to deliver whatever our client wants.
Data automation, you're the Director of Data Automation. That is a phrase that could have many meanings, depending upon the audience or depending upon the person using it. For you, and in your role, what does data automation mean?
It started out as a sort of automating our operations to whatever extent we could. So we have a lot of different platforms to use. We take data from a lot of different sources, and they all have their own, tweaks that need to be made. So it has become data automation because we didn't want to pin it down to one specific part of the role in operations. So it's now become just, I think as a lot of e-discovery vendors probably have learned over the years, is you no longer really provide specifically e-discovery services. We're data managers, and we look after data in a life cycle, and it doesn't really matter what the purpose is. It could be litigation, it could be a DSAR, it could be an investigation, whatever the governance, whatever the reason for the data being hosted by us is irrelevant. And understanding the life cycle of data and how best to use it, how best to leverage whatever information you can get from it is why we landed on data automation. So it's a relatively new department in Haystack. We sort of made it official in July this year, but I've been effectively running the automation side of things for about three years, I think, at this stage.
When you set out to either automate or provide additional automation, what does that process look like?
normally we're solving a problem to some degree. We have an issue where, originally it was maybe quality was the original driver for automation, where, you've got 20, 30 people doing work, and there's a problem that always occurs. There's a pain point with quality control that just was causing an issue. So we looked at that and said, how do we get our team the best information? And we assess with all of our new initiatives that we take on, we basically assess that from the beginning and say, well, what is the specific problem that we're solving? Does it make sense to solve it? If it's going to take me 40 hours of thinking and planning and programming to solve a problem that saves us 2 hours a year,
maybe
not a very good use of our time. So we sort of identify, is it a problem worth solving? Does it give us a better quality output, and can we actually use it in our workflow effectively? Is it more efficient? So we kind of address that from a few different vantage points, and then work out how the automation works, test it, and then roll it into delivery. So there's a lot of steps in the process, and we're formalizing it more and more. It's kind of like I said, it's only formally been the automation team since July, so there's a lot of learning that has to go into sort of building this from the ground up.
With the team only being formally in place since July, how far along are you in the voyage you want to take with data automation at Haystack?
I'm 3 years in, so we have a fairly mature workflow. It covers a lot of different things. Like I said, we have a lot of different tools at our disposal, so it's not a case of just building, tailoring our automation in one stream. Like we have clients that require us to use their platform or our platform, so we need to be able to handle pretty much any direction that they want us to go in. So we're 3 years in to a project that started off as just, we need to get better control over what we're doing. We need to understand this process more. And since July, the main focus has been to deliver something a bit more cohesive to the entire operations team that we have. And that's whether we use Reveal or whether we use Brainspace or whatever tools that are at our disposal. We can make sure that those teams are trained, are experienced, know exactly what they're doing, but can leverage automation to get the job done faster.
Doing this automation work isn't a unilateral activity on your part, I wouldn't think. You've got to work with different platforms. Some of them are going to be more accommodating, I would assume, some less so. What makes for a good platform to work with?
I think it depends on the point of the particular platform. So some tools are just designed out of the box to be API driven, and you can basically automate those without any issues, no problems. But then there are some platforms which have come from a different background, and they weren't initially designed to be dealt with that way. The lens through which you view them historically was they had a different purpose. So most of the tools these days are heading in that direction. So we're finding the ability for us to automate tools is becoming broader. And what makes for a good tool is having open APIs that you can leverage. Basically, any function that you can do in the platform, you can do through an API. Therefore, we can automate it, and therefore we can improve the output. We can improve performance. It's more about the ease through which you can leverage the APIs. I think is how I would rate the tool.
One of your goals, as I understand it, is to pursue ever better operational excellence.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
This started off as a presentation I made to our executive team back in the Night Owl days, I think about 4 years ago. And we just everyone in the department had to make a presentation. And since I was, at the time, I think I was the director of operations for EMEA. And because I'm 6 hours behind a lot of my colleagues, I had a different focus. I wasn't focusing on delivering the work. I was doing some automation stuff, but assessing our operation in general, saying like where are we missing out? What are we not doing that we could do better? Or how do we improve quality? How do we essentially keep learning, keep asking ourselves those hard questions? Are we actually delivering value? Because sometimes you kind of you get lost in the forest.
It's an easy question to ask.
Very easy
A
question
hard
to
one
ask.
to answer.
Yeah, so what it means to me, I think, is never stopping learning. You're always trying to find where you can improve. Are you using the best tools? Are you using the best workflow? Where can you shave off difficult steps to make an improved workflow, save time, save money? Ultimately give our teams back the time to go and do the hard stuff, because 90% of our data goes into automation. It's the 10% of data that kills people. That's the stuff that really hurts the team and takes a long time to handle. So the more we can take that 90% away from the boring work effectively, take that away from our really skilled techs who have lots of abilities, we can give them back that time. So I think operational excellence is converting your tool sets into efficiency as much as possible.
How much of that, I'm curious on this. Clearly, a big part of the focus is on automating that 90%. You've got the 10%. How much of this process is helping to more efficiently and effectively identify whatever that 10% is going to be?
It's a difficult one to answer because data changes on a daily basis, and what was that 10% is changing every day. So
yes, yesterday is 10%.
Yeah,
today is different from tomorrow's.
Like Slack data or like chat messages, which weren't really prevalent 4 or 5 years ago, have now become like they're as standard. Teams is exported in the PST now. So we're dealing with Teams just by virtue of the fact that somebody exported data.
As soon as you get a PST, you have a chance of that.
Yeah, and Teams is complicated, very dense data. We've seen, what used to be 20 gigabytes of data is now 80, 90 gigabytes when you unpack it all and you rebuild all the communication strands. So it's the 10%. I think part of this is learning to accept what we don't know. And when somebody says, here's some new data, we need to be very inquisitive about it to make sure we understand it as well as we can, as early as we can, because you find yourself a year later going, we still haven't really understood this structure because no one's been asking for it. But if we go to our clients and say, well, you've given us this data, here's what we've extracted from this in terms of value, is this something that we think you can use? And all of a sudden you go, actually, we didn't even know we had this. So I think, again, it's learning what that 10% actually is, and it's changing all the time. And effectively, it's like a funnel. The 10% is your learning curve, and you learn how to handle it, and you learn how to automate it, and then that falls into 90%, and something else fills that gap.
It keeps going.
Yeah, so never-ending cycle.
With that 10% and trying to identify what's new and different, ideally, dealing with that would also be part of the process automation, right? You'd be trying to automate processes to allow you to do that.
Yeah, and effectively one of the first things we automated was our reporting, because exporting reports is not a difficult thing to do, but it's time consuming on large data sets, and really understanding what is important in the report is kind of crucial. And you hand a report over on a terabyte of data. That report needs a report. You've got different layers of complexity. So what we've discovered in our reporting was it's the best tool we have to give us the information about what we don't know, because that terabyte of data starts off as it's all email, but it's not all email. There's other attachments and other data in there, and you start to learn that client deals with a very specific data type that you don't normally see. So you get to flag that out. So we assess our reports early in the game, and we start to build out a better understanding of what that client data is basically as soon as we can. So that helps drive our ability to automate better.
It would seem from what you're saying that you've got two competing objectives here that you have to meet, or at least two that I'm thinking of right now. On the one hand, with automation, I would think you would want to try to make your processes as uniform as you can. And at the same time, you've got very different clients with very differing needs and demands that call for more bespoke capabilities. How do you and balance the desire for uniformity with the desire for bespoke results?
We fought this fight very early in the process because the first people to fight back with us were our own client services team. Because they're like, our clients are special. Your automation's great, but it's not going to fit our clients. And I think the journey for clients and for client services and for the people who are kind of in the trenches every day dealing with new data and processes is you realize that yes, your data is special and yes, your case is different to everybody else's, but ultimately there are way more crossovers in data sets than there are differences. It's the 90% argument again. So yeah, we have that argument all the time, and we have to build a separate workflow for a particular client because they've got a very, very specific request that our workflow currently doesn't take care of. So my competing interest is actually made very simple because we don't make a competing argument for that. I don't try to tell anyone that their data is not special and we can't have it. We just build workflows that are incredibly customizable. So our workflow will cater for 90%. That's a big chunk of stuff. So we have most clients put most of their data through automation, and you quickly learn, and the clients hopefully also quickly learn that as special as their data is, it's only a little bit special. It's only 10% special, maybe, and you can handle.
You still have to help them feel special.
Yeah, and that's like you go on a journey. Like we have a lot of clients who started off with by flat out refusing to have any. Well, like all technologies. 10 years ago, people refused to use review platforms.
Right.
I had projects where people said just print it all.
Or for the keynote speaker this morning, refused to use Tower.
Yeah, and those arguments I think are short-lived. And once demonstration is the best way to show, I just demonstrated the workflow to somebody, and they went, "Oh wow, that was like 3 clicks." I said, "Yeah, that used to be, 5 or 6 hours of somebody's time, and one, depending on." Different clients and different billing models. Sometimes that directly translates into 5 hours of billable time back to the client. And we're in this world now where everyone wants cheaper and better services. They don't want to pay for certain things, not pay for admin time, which is fun. That's where we're going. We want subscription services. We want, all you can eat kind of setup. So our desire is more so to enable that than to make it more complicated. So we just let people tell us whatever they need to tell us, and we'll absorb it, we'll learn, we'll modify the workflow to accept whatever.
How much of the automation that you all work on is behind the scenes as far as the client is concerned, and how much of it is client facing, so the client can really see it with this?
We have certain automation that is directly client facing. We have certain clients who they don't want to talk to us. They really like us, but they just don't want to talk to us. They're snappy. They've got we have clients that send us 110 document chunks a day, and that's incredibly time consuming. And I don't think anyone's going to get a good experience, from a client relationship standpoint if all you're doing is saying, what's the update on batch 27 from yesterday. It's a nightmare. It's never ending. So we've built certain automation where a client basically has a self-service portal. They just log on, they drop data in, and they hit go, and it goes through it's a defined workflow. It's not customizable. They have a very specific thing they want. So we designed the workflow to handle that, and that is entirely automated. The client watches as the job progresses, and they see it drop into the review platform. They go in, they QC it themselves, and if something goes wrong, they go back to the team and say, "Hey, that data didn't work." So we have the extreme of effectively a self-service model where everything is hands-off, right down to we have clients who they just don't want to deal with anything other than a person. They want to be able to ring somebody and say, "I'm sending you 200 gigabytes of X custodian. I need it by this time. And there, we cater for everything. There's no reason not to.
Right, and neither one is inherently better than
No, not at all. And I think that's the key takeaway from a lot of the discussions we have with people is, and it was our initial big fight, like I was saying, with client services teams, where they're emphasizing how unique everything is, and we're saying it is, but it isn't. And the more you demonstrate how easy it is to put things into funnels and organize things by type or whatever it is, then the client sees that and they realize that actually we can get more work done. They're not afraid of the big projects anymore. They're not afraid of we deliver enough value to them that they can say, okay, you guys just handle that whole thing. We don't like, why are we worrying about it? So you operationalize the entire process, and it becomes just a step in the project. It's no longer we need to scope, we need to do all these things. That's all just done as part of a project now. And processing, which used to be a big deal back when it was $30,000 a gigabyte, you were dealing with crazy small volumes, but crazy costs.
Right.
Now we're driving it down. We can deal with more data more quickly for more clients, and that's what they're asking for. So,
for the portion of the automation that clients can see, I would imagine what you've been saying, that there's no one template for everything. It varies greatly. How much does the look and feel differ as opposed to the range of capabilities available?
It changes from the perspective of the needs, I suppose. So you've got the clients who want to be able to upload stuff and basically handle things themselves. They have a portal. They go to a portal. It's an interactive process. They log in and they do stuff. They configure things. But then we've got the other side of it where if they just upload data to one of our other data intake systems, it's another secure file transfer system we have, that automatically transfers the data into our system and organizes it and runs a report. The client never sees that.
Right.
But it means that's an entirely behind the scenes thing, but it saves incredible amounts of time, and the reports are created automatically. So we can basically create a system where behind the scenes stuff happens that no one needs to see. It's just like how the sausage is made effectively, but that does deliver something back to the client. They get a report sent to them if that's what the workflow is. So you have sort of very simplistic, just upload data to a website type of interactivity, right down to the heavy portal with lots of information and you see all your matters, see all your information, and ultimately what we're working towards is having a model where people can log in and just interact with everything at once. They want to see a holistic view of all their matters, all their data, where they are with all their matters. So it's an ongoing journey, and I think just like any other part of this process, it's very client driven. They want to see something, we'll build it for them. Like there's no ask is too difficult. I think we can usually accommodate the majority of what people are looking for, unless it is literally impossible. We'll try and accommodate what they want to see.
I suspect I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask the question to see what I get back. How actively involved are clients in this whole process of automating the operations?
Some of them are directly involved, as in they are the ones driving. They have the conversation with the salesperson to say, hey, we want to take more control of this. We want to be, we've got 3 specific workflows we want you guys to develop for us. So here's our workflow. Can you go and do that? So sometimes it's a very interactive, and usually a very fruitful conversation. We have very good, 3 or 4 hour sessions with a client where we sit down with them and go through their entire process, help them improve it as well. Point out, well, actually you're doing this, so why not also do this bit because it's the same thing, or you can extract more information.
They should go hand in glove.
They usually do.
The improvement.
They usually do, and sometimes sort of you revolutionize how they do things because they've gone from a very manual, very repeatable process that's extremely time expensive because they've got the individuals in that team, and they're usually small teams. Like these are in-house e-discovery teams, maybe 2 or 3 people doing mammoth amounts of work, and anything you can do to improve their processes is like mind-blowing. So those processes are very fruitful usually, and then like I said, we've other clients who just they don't want anything to do with anything. They want to ring somebody and say, go do this. We're paying for it, so just go do this. So it's a full gamut. We have all types of clients. Ones who are doing a little bit, ones who are doing a lot, and ones who are doing absolutely nothing.
With what you're doing today and looking forward, what are some of the biggest challenges that you are facing?
I think balancing the desire to automate stuff, the desire to automate everything is kind of it's hard not to. You come away from a really good automation session where you've cracked some really complicated piece that took a week or two, and you realize, we can literally automate anything. This is going in a really good direction, and balancing that with, is it worth it? Are we doing more harm than good? Because I think one of the difficulties behind automation, or one of the side effects of automation, is you're no longer creating as many subject matter experts as you used to, because people aren't in the systems as often.
Right.
You may be creating a subject matter expert in a particular type of data because they're really good at dealing with whatever Slack.
But some skill sets can get lost.
They atrophy. The same as me. I'm not in some of the systems I was in when I was actually doing the processing years ago.
Right.
I can automate it really well, but if I had to jump back in again and really dive in, there's a few platforms that I'm not really sure I'd actually remember where everything is, and they update all the time, and I'm speaking to them through an API language all the time. I'm not really in an interface kind of mode. So a lot of what I'm doing is just dealing with input output stuff. I just want to know that if I push this over there, it's going to come back to me in a certain way, and I can track that and I can rely on it. That's what I'm trying to do.
Right.
So yeah, I think the challenge is not automating stuff just for the sake of it. That you still stick to our guns of, we're doing it for a particular reason. We want to improve the process, not just automate stuff for the sake of it. And maintain that level of skill sets with the team, because you've got, our team is never really getting smaller. As one of the fears that people had is we'd automate stuff and everyone would be fired. We're just giving you more time to do the other stuff.
Right.
And it gives us more time. And one of the really positive side effects of it is it literally improves your team's output by 300 or 400%. You are literally able to do the work of a team several times the size that you had, because 90% of what you do is automated. So yeah, there are challenges, and there's things we haven't really come across yet as well. We don't know what the future holds in terms of data transitioning between jurisdictions. The US is going to bring it. There will be several new laws coming into effect in January, which might change entirely how we do things. Some automations just die because they're not functional anymore. They don't work. We can't. I can't just send data from the EU to the US, obviously. So we need to have separate things that we do, and we work on those challenges as they come. So legislation changing is a tough one as well, because it changes what you're required to do. It changes the output. It changes the format sometimes.
So the flip side of that, in the just 2 minutes or less that remain, in addition to greater efficiency, what opportunities does this type of automation present?
Outside of just getting more data processed, there are efficiencies in basically every single thing you can think of, like just loading data to a platform, for example. That's typically been a single threaded thing, because you got one person who sits down and puts the data in. It's kind of a one thread. With automation, you can multi-thread almost everything. There are certain things that are just single-threaded by nature. You can't speed up certain processes. That's just a fact. But we don't have technology that can do it easily, so we just don't. I'm not trying to reinvent wheels here. I'm just trying to use leverage technologies.
Right.
So the efficiencies are literally in every step. So what used to take somebody 12 or 14 hours, say, for a really large data set, it still takes 12 or 14 hours to do the processing. But but not a person. You've removed
14 hours.
All the gaps. Like every time I have to stop doing something and go over to a different server and log into a different thing and click on a different system and get back in there, all those 2 or 3 minutes add up. And what we've seen is a use time of the systems goes up. You're using your licensing better. You get to really leverage and utilize what you're paying for. Because certain systems we realized we're only really using them from like 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. because when everyone's finished, there's no one using them.
Right.
So we're now a 24/7 operation,
Mm-hmm.
and we are staffed 24/7 as well. So we have people on shift working around the clock. But it means we can truly utilize all of the platforms to their fullest extent when we need to. So it means you drive down certain costs. We don't need to have spare licensing for stuff just in case. We could kind of work around that with just scheduling the work. You can schedule things to happen at certain times, and then sort of your efficiencies become directly measurable. You can quantify it and say, here, executive team, this is exactly how much time we've saved. We did one pretty big automation step where the maths worked out to us effectively saving 12 days a week of human time. And again, people were worried that we were, that we were going to have to like get rid of people, but no, those 12 days per week are now free for doing other things, much higher value operations.
Activities. Yep.
And we're seeing a resurgence of, the value-led conversations with clients. Where we're saying, have you thought about doing it this way? Because the team are free to think about things. So the efficiency thing is just everywhere. There are no steps that I can think of that are not improved pretty dramatically by automation.
Oh, thank you. This is I'm George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS, sponsored by Reveal, broadcast from Dublin. And my guest here for the first of our three today has been Jonathan Flood.
Thanks for having me.
Haystack. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Jonathan.
George.